items are the curve. It's been brought up a number of times during the project review. It's just simply not in the scope of this project, and it was, and the state is not going to accept it. If you want to straighten out that road, the state is out for two things. End the project short and you finish it, or end it and start it somewhere beyond it and you finish it. They're not going to get into it because you're going to have to mitigate the wetland. Without an official opinion from the Concom, the path of least resistance to mitigate that wetland is to make the wetlands on the other side of the road if in fact you straighten it out. So you, instead of having wetlands on one side, you would have a road that would be straighter, but wetlands on each side. The state looks at that and says, we are not going to deal with that in this project. If the town wants to come back at a later time and straighten that road out and deal with its local conservation commission to address the wetlands, so be it. They're not going to do it. I know that was an answer that was not well received here, but that is the answer. Secondly, regarding Bill Smith's comment on what's in the beacon, there is a move afoot by Mass Highway Department to hold consulting firms like Frister and the town to not go in and lowball projects in order to get them, and then turn around and have the estimates come in, and they're out of sight. So Mass Highway Department is introducing conditions to communities as a guard against, if you will, for that happening. About 3 months ago, I had a direct audience with Tom Broderick, the chief engineer of Mass Highway. He said right now the only projects that are affected by that on this year's TIP, Transportation Improvement Program, which we're on, are the enhancement programs. Those are bikeways, pathways, and so forth, because they can get very fluffy with landscape architect and so forth. And what can start out as a bikeway, very simple, can get very fancy. And those projects, although they're a lot less money than this, when you multiply them across the state, can get out of control in costs. That's the area that they're targeting. We've been assured by the Mass Highway Department, this project, along with all the other projects on the TIP, is not affected. What does that mean? That means, per the design, a $5.5 million estimate, without the town tweaking those plans, in other words, coming in and saying, we want this fancier grade walk, or what have you, the state is on the hook to pick up the cost of that project if in fact the bid comes in at $6 million. It's only if we go in as a non-participating item, if you will, on some of the decorative aspects of this project, will the state come back to us and say, you'll have to pick up the difference. They'll credit us for what would be basic for the plan for what we want. And there are certain situations in this project that we may want to visit that option in the downtown area along with the other grant that's overlaid this through the underground wiring project. But to be alarmed that we would be on the hook for $500,000 or $1.5 million, we cannot, Public Works cannot come back to the Board of Selectmen in good conscience and ask the town to get caught in that type of contract. We've already discussed that with the town, the state engineer, the chief engineer. We're not going down that road. So we're assured they're on the hook for 100% of whatever the actual costs are within the scope of that design.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Yeah, I would just think that if in fact that's the case, I think the town of North Reading should be assured in writing, documented, that the state will go on the hook. Because the way it reads is, any unforeseen cost will be borne by the town over and above the 5.5.
I understand your report. And when this project is 100% thoroughly reviewed and completed by the Mass Highway Department, that such agreement will be, that document will exist.
Thank you. Mr. Reitman.
Yeah, Dave, I still have a concern the foot of Oakdale and Park. The last time the discussion on that, I asked about it, and I was told that there's going to be a widening of the southern part of the road as you head east on Oakdale, so cars can go straight through, and the cars turning into Oakdale have a separate lane, but the cars turning left to go east on Park Street. If that lane is widened, it seems like it's only gonna show that when you get hit, the car is gonna be doing 40 miles an hour instead of 20 miles an hour. Have you had any safety engineers look at that point about widening that area? Because what I'm saying now is that when you try to turn left coming out of Oakdale, if a car stops in the middle of the road heading east to let you out, there's a car on the outside going a lot faster. Now, if you're gonna widen that lane, it'll just make them go a little
I
faster.
believe the ultimate answer to your question was, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, or if there's more to this, was the traffic signal at Town Center. Without a traffic signal in Town Center, you didn't have a gap of traffic coming
Heading west.
westbound. But because you have a traffic signal now at Freedom Park in winter to gap eastbound, and traffic signals at Town Center to gap westbound, you'll be able to get to your intersection and turn, because you're going to have traffic gaps that you wouldn't have before.
That will still be widened though?
Yeah, I think the question was on eastbound traffic, and that there's a left turn pocket on 62 to turn on to Oakdale, so there'll be basically 3 lanes.
A high-speed lane on the outside.
There'll be a lane on the outside where cars today, I think, when they pass someone, if they're stopped making a left, they're generally going to be riding on kind of on the shoulder, probably, hopefully not traveling at a high rate of speed. The speed limit on 62 is not being proposed to be changed. The design speed is 35 miles per hour. The speed limit is not going to be changed. It's they probably will be able to drive faster on the side there because they won't be riding on a shoulder. It'll be a safer road, though. It'll be a smooth road as opposed to riding through a broken up shoulder. So that's 61 and a half.
It doesn't seem like it's gonna be any safer for cars coming out of Oakdale, turning left. I'm talking about specific time in the morning, 7:30 in the morning.
7:30 in the morning, most of the traffic is actually on 60.
Half the traffic's coming up Oakdale, go to high school, middle school, coming at you both ways.
That specific concern is not been looked at.
So I wish somebody had looked at that particular time in the morning.
But I think that condition would be the same on any stretch of 62.
But I think
The
the
speed limit's
lights
not-
will make it sensitive.
We can't, this project doesn't control speed.
Right.
Traffic signs and the police department enforce speed. If people are speeding, that causes the intersection problem. There's nothing we can do with this project, one way or the other, skinnier or wider, that's going to change things.
No, it's just been, right now, the guys are trying to squeeze around and they're doing about 20. So the lane was, hot top on the way, they're gonna go a little faster. But I think that maybe if there is civil lights in winter.
That's the most important to your situation, because you're not going to have the stacking and the frustration about people trying to get by if you have natural gaps where there is no traffic coming and cars can get out safely.
It'll give them a chance to go by. I understand. Gentlemen, second row.
This question is from Mr. Hanlon. Regarding the center light, presumably that's at Park and here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Going to be any provisions as far as the police and fire complex? We got to back up the traffic, we're going to have a gridlock, we got a problem getting out of it. And there's not going to be a place for it to go. Given the volume that I've seen in the last couple of years, which can go right around the corner beyond the old town hall, it's going to be a serious problem. And we're going to end up going down the wrong way, heading west on 62. It's going to be a real situation. There are controllers available. I'm not sure what the ramifications. I'm sure they have to be approved by the Mass DPW, but it really needs to be considered. It's going to create a serious problem as far as responses, timely responses, getting out of the station during travel there times. And same for the police.
I could somewhat answer some of that. I guess the intersection itself will be equipped with fire or emergency vehicle. I know it's line of sight, and so it's an issue of getting around to be able to call a preempt heading westbound in that case to clear out the intersection.
Excuse me,
But,
Joe, that was the best we could do as a compromise with the historical
Right.
district. They didn't want any more light standards
Right.
along that
I
corridor.
remember that discussion about
We have proposed what police and fire are really concerned about.
for another light in
and
by
this
the
was a
library, et
compromise.
cetera. Yeah, I do. I remember all that discussion vividly. Any more questions from, well, let me take the audience first then. Anybody else in the audience? Mr. Rock?
On the point that Mr. Smith raised, you said that there was a move on by the state to, not have the town pick up anymore. Are you saying there is no projects in this, or no sections in this project that in fact can escalate where we would be stuck paying the difference?
What I'm saying is, we've been assured by Mass Highway Department, and we will enter an agreement, the Board of Selectmen and the Commonwealth of Mass, before this is advertised and awarded, per where we are and where we're going. And we've been assured by the chief engineer that the specific article in the Beacon, and for the last 6 months, has been discussed by Mass Highway Department as a new policy, that whatever that policy is, it's applied to enhancement grants, it's not applied to road grants this year. So that if that estimate comes in higher, we're not picking up any extra cost.
Okay, then, on that basis, you might have been assured, but I haven't been assured because I dealt with this before with the state and they were gonna do some stuff. They were gonna get back to me in writing, they never did. So, is there any way that we can get this in writing? One of the problems I have is going through this process here of this taking by eminent domain and then having something fall through on the project, but we've already, gone through with this portion of it. Can we get something in writing guaranteeing us before we in
No,
fact?
it's gotta be all completed. And that's a trip, not a trick, but a trip. The Commonwealth of Mass would, I guess I don't wanna be quoted. But let's just say, there's not enough money going around. So if someone doesn't comply, that money moves someplace else. We certainly don't want to put ourselves in a position to get off the tip this year because we're not ready for our ad date. We have to comply with 100% of roadway bridge review, which is at its 100% right now, all the environmental compliance, and the right-of-way acquisition before that agreement is going to be entered with the state to move this project forward. So we have to go forward. It's been a 7-year effort, and my advice to the board is to stay with the effort.
Mr. Smith?
Just one brief thing. My question isn't about the estimated cost and the bid award, it's the cost overruns. It's the cost overruns that was included in these articles and in the new procedures at the state level. It's cost overruns. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the award of the bid or anything else. It's what happens after the fact when they found out they got 25 feet of peat near that bridge instead of calculated 4, or whatever the case might be, what happened down on Route 28. It's the cost overruns have got to be borne by the town of North Reading. I'm not worried about the bid. I'm not worried about the amount of money that's being appropriated. It's the cost overrun, and that's where it says specifically right in there it will be borne by the community where the project is being conducted. That's what it says. And that's all I want to do is get clear, Dave, is whether or not that language means anything, or they just write.
It could be, these are proposed policies, and again, it's not going to affect this project.
This
We've been
project.
assured by Mass Highway, it's not going to affect this project or any other that's on the present tip.
And the state will pay for any cost overruns. So if
Right.
it goes over 5.5 and it's $1 million over, the state will supply the money.
Right. And
I just think the town should get that in writing.
well, what
I
I'm
just think
saying
it's
is,
well worth it.
and I guess I'm not saying it, I'll try another way. When we're done meeting all our compliances, and not until we're done, will this job be advertised. And at that time, there will be an agreement between the Commonwealth of Mass and the town vis-a-vis the Board of Selectmen in terms of the parameters of this project and what are the town's responsibilities above and beyond the engineering and right-of-way acquisition and the state's obligation to pay for this project.